David with Liguori Drag Racing, and I wanted to go over this log that I posted a video about last week, and I'll put this video in this video as well. But I wanted to go over the log, kind of dissect it, go over what I look for, what I'm looking at, make some changes, and I want to put a disclaimer out there that this bike is not perfect. It looks like a great run, 116 60 foot, 769 in the quarter. It was a good run, but it is nowhere near perfect. Most of the time I'm at the track helping other guys or trying to tune on this thing, and it's just not completely lined out yet. And I tune on it all the time. I'm always making changes, always trying to get better, always adding new sensors or trying new things that make me need to retune it. So for example, this is one of the first quarter mile runs on a new nitrous solenoid that I was testing. So with the old nitrous solenoid, I had the fuel kind of mostly tuned. It was actually a lot better than it was, other than I had a very lean spot at the hit with the other one, so I changed solenoids to test it, and I like this solenoid a lot better, but I'm still tuning the fuel and trying to get it dialed in and making small changes at a time so that I don't lose where I'm at. Sometimes you need to make a big change, and sometimes you make a very small change, and when your bike is running this good, you want to make small changes because you don't want to make a big change and then be out in left field somewhere. So I'm going to go over some changes, go over some data, and show you what I'm looking at. So I'm going to open the file. So here is the file on that. This is not the data log. That is from another bike. But here's my fuel table. And just going to go over some things. So what I see first is I see the fuel correcting at the hit, and then it's correcting down track. And this is on nitrous. This is the ramp that's in it. So I'm starting out at 18%, and about 3/4 of a second it starts to ramp up, and it's 100% at 7 seconds. But like I talked about in my progressive nitrous video, if you didn't watch that, go back and watch it. You can see the nitrous progressive here. So this is what the solenoid is doing, and it's pulsing, and this is jet pressure compared to nitrous bottle pressure. So you can see having a jet pressure is nice because you can see when they almost come together. And if you hone in on this here, you can see that it pretty much stops pulsing at about 83% or so, and it's really pulsing here, but it's not making a big drastic difference. So 60 to 70%, we're almost at the bottle pressure line, and it's almost flat compared to up here. And then about the 75% mark, we're barely pulsing, and 80%, we're pretty much wide open. And the controller is controlling it, so it's telling it to pulse that, but the solenoid mechanically can't pulse that quick. It's just like if I were to have this too low at the hit, say I'd have this at maybe 10%, the solenoid might not even work at 10%. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. So the hertz, how many times per second it pulses, affects that. You can test nitrous and stuff for days and get different results for different hertz ratings and things like that. But you can see that it's pulling pretty much 10% out, and I believe that's all I have it allowed to do. Yeah, 10%. So I don't have it allow to pull anything up to a half a second, and then I allow 10% down track. So we can see that it's pulling 8 to 9% all the way up from 70% on. So what I'm going to do is come in here, go to my progressive fuel table, and I'm going to pull fuel out here. So I'm going to drop this, and I'm only going to make small changes at a time, because it's not bad to have your fuel map be corrected. You want the minimal as you can possibly get. You're never going to be zero. It's always going to fluctuate, probably -3 to +3. It's always going to be a little wavy right there. But you want it to be the least amount as possible. And we bracket race. Well, the most thing I do is bracket race or index race. And I'm trying to tune this so I don't have to touch the fuel map, whether it's between April to super hot in July and August, all the way to October. So I'm going to pull about 5 pounds per hour of fuel away from it and see where my percentage drops to. So if I pull out 5 here and then interpolate it across, pull 5 pounds per hour of fuel, and then I can see on the next run where my correction is. If it drops down to 7 or 8%, I'm definitely going the right way because I'm taking fuel away from it. And this is on the nitrous. I have it tuned in on motor, so the nitrous is affecting it. So I need to focus directly on the pounds per hour and where my nitrous percentage is. So we go back to the data log here, and so we made that change there. Let's see, what else do I see? I see these little tips here on each gear shift, and unfortunately I have an auto transmission that sometimes doesn't want to auto and shift, so I put a little bit of kill time in my first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and then it has a kill in fifth and sixth. So unfortunately, I'd rather it kill a little bit than to lose a round over it, and I've already lost a couple rounds over that. And I haven't pulled the transmission out. I've looked at the shift forks. Everything seems to be okay, but I just don't want to lose a round because of it again. So I put kill time in it, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take some power away from it here. Basically put power back into it, I should say. When I say take power away, I mean not as much power loss during the kill shift. So I'm going to bump these down a little bit. So what this is doing is the ignition cut on power reduction, and I'm also cutting fuel as well. So for this amount of time, for 10 milliseconds, I'm cutting 70% of ignition, and so forth. So I'm going to go down to 70 on all these, and I'm also going to drop the kill time down on the 4-5 and 5-6 shift, and try to narrow that down a little bit. Hopefully try to take these away or get them more minimal, something like this. I want the air fuel ratio not to spike as much, so if I take some ignition away, some ignition cut away, it will still help burn that fuel that's in the combustion chamber, and we should see that drop. Next thing I want to look at is I have some wheel speed here, and unfortunately my drive shaft sensor is whacked. So drive shafts, RPM. So looking at this, I need to look at my sensor, I need to look at my wiring, I need to possibly turn my sensor. So the drive shaft sensors have a little magnet at the end of the sensor, and it could be just slightly off of the tone ring, and that could be causing this. I've kind of fought this a little bit. I've changed the gap, adjusted the gap, and I think I'm just finally going to put a new sensor on it, and hopefully that fixes it. But it hasn't really worked all year, but I haven't really needed it either. I can see that I have wheel speed just off of my engine RPM. If I didn't have wheel speed, my engine RPM would just follow this right up. EGT looks pretty good. O2 target all looks good. This is my timing. So I'm launching with 32 degrees and then pulling it out as I progress the nitrous in. And I have all of the timing out of it at about 77%. So by the time the nitrous solenoid gets to wide open, it has all the timing out of it. Looking at my oil pressure, everything looks good there. Fuel pressure looks good, running 63, 64 pounds. Shift pressure looks good. You can see that it drops each gear. So if I always run a shift pressure sensor in all my bikes, and the reason I do this is because if I ever have a shifting issue, I can come back and see if the solenoid worked. So previously, when I had a problem where my auto transmission didn't auto, I could come in here and I could see that the shift solenoid opened based off of the pressure drop. And I am shifting with nitrous, so I have good pressure the whole track. It's actually a little bit higher than what I'd like it to see. I normally go around 100, 110, but it still ships fine. My accel speed is good. My wheel speed traction. This is based off of the drive shaft sensor, so that does not work properly. What else do we want to look at? So Joe Deck put a comment on that he wanted to see how to get away from a rich condition right here at the launch. And Joe, there's a couple ways to do it. One way to do it is to launch fuel in rich, take 10% out or 5% or whatever it needs. So I tried a 10% on this. I'm probably going to actually back that down to -5. So I'll show you how to do that here. And what I'm doing is I'm using time-based compensations. and time-based fuel enrichment. And so this yellow is our graph, and we can change this to 5, -5, and then we can interpolate that up so that it goes back to 0, so that it doesn't adjust it going down track anymore. So we can take fuel away from it there. This is also where I do my nitrous timing. I don't do my nitrous timing on this progressive. It's just my preference to do that. I can get into that a little deeper with you guys if you'd like. If you'd like me to do that, put a comment down below that you want me to go over time-based ignition advanced retard for your nitrous, and I'll do a separate video on that. Another way to take fuel away at the hit is to look at your two-step RPM. And so I'm 4750, and I'm already taking fuel away here, but I needed to take more fuel away. So what I did was I looked at where I'm launching at, so 4750, and if you look on the data log right here, it's 6500. So let's round it up to 7000 RPMs that I want to take fuel away from. So 7000, I can come in here and I can click M and 0.9, and I can take 10% out like that. And we can see that the fuel map dropped here. And then we can interpolate that up, or during certain situations, and this is how I got this bike tuned, I just copy and paste the top line to the 90% line, and then I interpolate up from there. So we can take fuel away below 7000 here. So our fuel map looks a little goofy, but we have fuel taken away where we need it taken away. Now this will also affect your two-step. So if we take 10% away here, we may need to add 10% to our two-step. And you may think that this is counteracting, but it's not. So this 10% is added on the two-step only. So when you let go of the button and your bike launches, that 10% is gone. It's no more. So ultimately it burns it super quick. So you can take fuel away or add it based off of what you need for your two-step, or you can take it directly away off of time-based, and this happens directly off of a two-step release. So there's two ways to do that there. Normally this is the cleaner and easier way to do it. Just pull 10%. Usually pull it for about a quarter second or so. So a couple ways to make this run better. Try to get some wheel speed out of it. Try to get the fuel correction down. So when I adjust that 10% on the fuel enrichment down to 5%, it's going to change this. So I'm not really going to change any of this here because it's adding 7% there, but it went back lean here. So being that it was too lean here, I'm going to put 5% back into the fuel enrich on the launch and see what the change does here. And then I'm going to make changes based off of that. So we're 3% here, 0%, 1%, and then we start getting richer as we go because of our nitrous fueling. And we already made that change. So this should ultimately be less O2 correction on the next pass. So it's a fairly in-depth and not in-depth video, depending on your combination. This may not pertain to you at all, but this is kind of how I go over a data log and make changes for the better. Sometimes I don't make changes for the better. Sometimes it gets worse, but that's what testing is for. Unfortunately, I don't have another pass after this to back up the changes that I made because it rained out the next day on Saturday, and it rained out this past weekend also. So rain really sucks this year. But I'll get some other passes, and hopefully I can get a couple passes in one day and go over the changes that I made that day, and we can see a progression. So this log and a couple other logs that I got from a couple other bikes, I can do other videos on. So stay tuned for more of these data log videos. I want to do more of them because I want to teach you guys how to look at data. You need to look at your data. You need to understand what you're looking at, and you need to be able to make changes. A lot of people don't understand what they're looking at. It's mainly fuel and ignition is what you're looking at. If you have your fuel and ignition dialed in, then you can tune everything else for wheel speed and nitrous, everything else. So if you have your fuel and ignition dialed in, look at your spark plugs. Your spark plug is in your combustion chamber. You don't have to look at a O2 sensor to see what is going on. Look at your spark plugs. Pull a spark plug like you did back in the old days when you ran carburetors and electrons and power jets, and see if you need to add fuel to your bike. If you need to add fuel to your bike, come in here and add fuel. If you need to remove fuel, come in here and remove fuel. If you need to put more timing in it, less timing, so forth. Look at your spark plugs. If you don't know how to read a spark plug, there's many articles online. Reher Morrison has a great article on how to read a spark plug. I can put that link down in the description of this video. You need to learn what you're looking at, and hopefully doing more of these videos, I can show you what I do and make changes and teach you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks.